there was a narrow tank coming up out of the ground, and it was surrounded by a donut of water. But just down at the bottom of the water, there was tar. Who knows how thick it was? And tar preserves things, and the cat had served many purposes. But I lowered this cat in there. And then about a year later, came back and pulled the wire, and the cat came out, impregnated with tar. And I laid the cat down on the ground, and came back another year later. And it was a perfect marriage of cat and earth. Tar impregnated cat in earth. And I have a photograph of that. But the cat did end up in a scene. But it was unrecognizable. Welcome to the Sunday Movie Marathon.
Mate, what movie was that from?
That's just David Lynch saying some stuff. You can look on like YouTube, there's like a wealth of David Lynch just being weird. He's the director of Mulholland Drive that we're going to talk about. It's just like this crazy dude.
Well, and that's just something he riffed on in an interview for no reason.
Yeah, he's insane.
The guy's strange.
What he did during the filming of his first film, Eraserhead. There's like on the Blu-ray, there's like a clip of him telling the story, and he goes, "It's like right over there," and the camera just pans down. It's just like looks like a rock from. It's just unrecognizable.
Mate, these directors, they're all fucking weird.
He's one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen, to be honest.
In
the
that
worst
same
combination is when
in
you
that same interview, someone asks him if he's weird, and he just goes, "I'm not actually that weird," and that's it.
Yeah.
That's almost like saying, "I'm a nice person." If you have to say it, you probably are it.
Then like you look at all these other interviews or like clips from like him directing, and you're like, this guy's something else. You seen like the Plaster of Paris video of him, like someone's like, "It's Plaster of Paris," and he's like, "Plaster of Paris, bullshit." I'm like, what? It's like this 5-second clip, and I'm like, what's the context here?
Because he wanted something specific, and they couldn't find it, so they brought Plaster of Paris because they thought it was like going to be the same thing, and he just got super angry.
These directors say,
"Who fucking cares how long a scene is?"
That's my favorite.
That kind of guy. He hates like people watching movies on their phones. It's like, when you watch a movie on your phone, you are not getting the intended experience. You can't watch a movie on your fucking telephone.
I don't think I've ever watched a David Lynch movie other than Mulholland Drive. And I've never seen interviews with him, but he sounds fucking nuts.
He is.
He just sounds batshit.
Should we get into Mulholland Drive?
That's not the first recommendation, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was Chris.
Yeah, it's David Lynch is my favourite director, so.
Ah, right. A lot starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Explains a lot.
So I picked David Lynch's, I think it's 2001 film, Mulholland Drive. The film is about a girl played by Naomi Watts who moves to LA to start an acting career, but when she moves into her aunt's house, she finds a woman called Rita who has basically gotten into a car crash and is suffering from amnesia, and she just wandered into the house. So the two then decide to go on an adventure together to discover who she is, where she came from, and put the pieces together. Like the rough plot. There's a lot more that happens, and it's told in a very strange, not really structured way. So yeah, what did you guys think of Mulholland Drive?
I was not invested in this movie, not in the slightest. So when I started watching it the other day, I sent you guys a message, didn't I, saying that the film was boring.
Yeah.
And watching to the end of the film, that opinion still stands valid. It was some of the acting in it was just so strange, and like I've started saying, rather than movies are bad, that I'm just not invested in them, because you can't really say a movie's bad because everything's subjective. But yeah, I was not invested in this movie one bit. Didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. I've seen this movie 3 times now. I love it. When I watched it first, like Chris got me the Blu-ray after I was having like a particularly hard time, and I watched it, and I was like, it certainly took my mind off things, but I have no idea what the hell just happened. So like, I didn't even know what to think of it the first time, and then I watched it a second time, and I sort of got more about what I thought it was about, or like more that I took away from it. And the third time, I think things did sort of, it clicked a bit more with me, and I still loved it just as much, but just things felt like they served more of a purpose when I had what I thought was going on in my mind.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, it was definitely a movie where I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to have to watch this like more than once to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, I was exactly like that. I've seen it a few times also, and the first time I watched it, I don't think I'd watched any other David Lynch films too. I think it was the first one I watched, and the first time around I actually like hated it because I didn't understand anything. I just thought it was super slow and boring. And then I watched it again like 5-6 years later, and it was just like a completely different experience for me. Like, I was super invested. I loved everything that was going on. I actually kind of understood what was going on. And now it's like probably my favourite film by him. It's one of my favourite films.
Maybe it's the same as Eyes Wide Shut, where you've kind of, that film was like, when I initially watched that, it was pretty slow, pretty boring. But again, that's another film where I would have had to have watched it a second time to probably really give an accurate opinion and review of the film. But that's like going in, like watching this movie by the end of it. That's exactly what I thought. It was very reminiscent of how I felt going into.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
You get that with a lot of David Lynch movies, to be honest. He's that kind of director.
Yeah, I was gonna say is like he the sort of director that. Because like Chris said, the movie, like when I was watching this movie, there were so many scenes that are just like, it's intercut between like so many different like plot lines in this film. Well, not plot lines, but character and their own subjective plot lines. I was like, what? We're literally just with 2 girls, and now we're with like someone who's killing people. Poor janitor.
Yeah, it does. It kind of comes together in the final act. I think a lot of the pieces come together, but it's one of those films where I think it's a mystery, as is like pretty much all of David Lynch's movies, and the way he tells stories isn't like the way a standard director would, where you've got a clear beginning, middle, and end. He tells us films where he gives you basically all the pieces of the mystery in a completely all over the place fashion, and you have to try and kind of put all the pieces together yourself. And I feel like this film is a great example of that, like, because basically he scatters all these pieces of this mystery throughout, and if you like break it down and analyze it and obviously rewatch it, then it makes a lot more sense, like thinking about what the film's actually about.
I've started getting into, since doing this podcast, I've really been getting into movies where like that's sort of the case, where you're watching it and it's not as like straightforward, like you said, where there's a first, second, and third act that are very traditional. I'm kind of really enjoying like the films where you kind of have to pay attention to them, because like I said when we first started this, like my favorite movie genre is just stuff where and just watch it and not really have to pay attention to really understand. But like watching The Arrival, when I like really paid attention to that, there was so much stuff that I noticed that I wouldn't have done if I weren't paying attention to it, and it made the film a lot more interesting. And I feel like that's the same case with like Eyes Wide Shut, where when I did start paying attention to that film, it did get more enjoyable because there was just so much going on and all these things that you were putting together. And yeah, it may have been the case if I were watching this and paying attention, but it just lost my interest very, very quickly. I've never seen any of David Lynch's other films, so I don't know if it's just his style of directing that I'm just not interested in. or whether it's just like the one-off film that I wasn't really interested in. But I'm really getting into films where it's like that, where like throughout the movie you can put things together and kind of see where it's going to end up. You have to pay attention to do so.
Yeah, this is kind of a film that you never really know where it's going to end up. Like, yeah, it's not something where you can, like, from the beginning you can predict where it's going to go. He's constantly taking you down different avenues and showing you weird things, and it can get quite overwhelming and confusing, which is why it's definitely a film that you need to rewatch to really get the full experience, I think.
Yeah, I think people could look at it and, like, on a surface level be like, well, that was bullshit and I didn't enjoy that, and like it was just like trying to be really like interesting and metaphorical, and it's not really saying much. And I think that it's sort of like when you look at a movie and you go, well, what was the meaning of that? If you like try to search for like one singular meaning for like at least Mulholland Drive, you're not going to find much. Like the second time I watched it, I was just like along for the ride. I didn't really try to find any meaning in it. It just sort of, I let it take me where it wanted to. I had a much a better time with that the second time. With this, the third time watching it, it was sort of like I didn't have to think about what exactly it was about, but it was more like these pieces sort of fell together and in a certain type of way, and I got a lot of, like, I don't think it's about one thing. It's like it's about a lot of things. I think I got a lot of meaning about like this exaggerated portrayal of Hollywood. I think David Lynch is trying to express sort of how he feels film is kind of a means of creative and personal expression, but under the factory setting, you're restricted, and it's all about money and business and fame. And I think that's really heightened in like the crazy characters and the weird things that they do in this movie around like trying to get this movie made.
Yeah, like there's that the scene where Justin Theroux's character like meets the studio execs and stuff, and they're just all sat in silence, and it's just super tense. And then just out of nowhere, this guy just explodes and starts shouting because he didn't like his coffee.
That scene was fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
they just brought
so
the espresso in, and he's just saying to him, like, it's my movie. And he just stands up and shouts, and you're like, what the fuck?
I love it.
He like dribbles the coffee out onto the napkin. He's like, I'm very particular about my coffee. And like, we've got the coffee for you, all right? We've got the best coffee in the world for you. And he just like spits it out onto the napkin. And this other guy gets up, he like just screams. He's like, coffee! What the hell is happening?
There's a part of the movie where, so is it Betty? It's the name of the blonde girl that's with Rita.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when she arrives, and obviously she jumps in the taxi, goes to her aunt's house. So there's a shot of, I think it's like the old woman, so her aunt and her aunt's husband, driving in a cab just in the back seat of it. And it's just like 5 to 10 seconds, and she's just there smiling at the camera. And like her husband's got this like these massive glasses on that are fucking super thick, and she just like taps his leg, and then it just ends. I was like, what was that?
That's
It's just
like
made
cackling.
yeah, that's not her aunt. I think that's just two people that she met on her flight, and she was just talking to.
Oh yeah, it just made me laugh. So I was like, how random! But it's like
That shot
the
is
old man
hilarious.
just sat there in his glasses. It just looked like the kid from Up, the old man from Up.
They come back, don't they? The old people, they sort of come back
Yeah,
towards like the end. It's just weird.
they
These
come
weird
in
characters.
as like tiny, like little figures coming through her door, and then like scare her to death.
Yeah. They like crawl out of a bag.
So, like I said, I've not watched a lot of David Lynch films. What else has he done?
This is probably his most well-known film, I'd say. It's got the film Blue Velvet, which Max and Reed are very vocal about their hatred of. Did a film called Eraserhead.
we've heard that discussion.
His
I
most
think
like
people
normal
know about Elephant Man. a
Yeah, I
lot.
was gonna say his most normal films like The Elephant Man or his version of Dune he did in the 80s. Obviously, Denis Villeneuve is now doing a new version of.
Yeah. Nah, none of these movies I've seen. So I literally went into this movie with no reference point to what I was going into.
Yeah, I was the exact same when I saw it.
It's an interesting first movie from Lynch.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't like it at all the first time I watched it, and it took me a couple of years before I tried anything else of his. I think it was The Elephant Man I watched, and I was like, okay, I want to check out more of his stuff. And I watched Eraserhead, which is just batshit nonsense for an hour and a half.
I think that's like the case with a lot of films that you just go into and you don't really like them, or they're not really interesting the first time you see them, but then like on a second viewing, just something clicks, or you just enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah, I find out with all of his
my
films.
favorite movies.
Yeah, I find with all his films, like upon repeated viewings, I notice more things, or I understand the film a little bit better, and that's one of the reasons I love him so much. Because when I watch his films, I don't like leave them like completely understanding everything I've seen and completely knowing everything, but it makes me just like stop and think and make me want to return to him to piece all the pieces of the puzzle together.
See, I feel the exact same way about, and this is no way comparing these franchises together, but that's exactly how I, and probably a lot of comic book fans, feel about the Marvel movies, because there's so many comic book reference within these movies that, like, for you and Max, for example, that haven't read much of the comics, you probably don't get a lot of them. But every time I watch a Marvel movie, I notice something new that is a comic book reference, or that's like just straight out of the comics, and it's interesting to go back to. And yeah, so I completely understand why you'd be a fan of David Lynch films, or films in general where there's so much detail that you'd have to go back and watch it a few other times. It gives the film replayability without having to be in the mood to watch it. You want to understand it a bit more.
Yeah.
Well, context is important, I wouldn't say, like, watch Mulholland Drive and then maybe if you don't like it, go back to it, like, a couple of months later. I would probably say, like, watch Mulholland Drive if you don't like it, maybe, or, like, if you want to get more out of it, maybe watch more of David Lynch's movies before going back to it again, because I think the context of, like, how he makes films holds a lot of weight when you're trying to get into, like, Mulholland Drive, or any one of his films, really, if you just know who he is as a person, or, like, how he likes to make movies.
Yeah, whenever Chris has mentioned him or spoke about him, he's always seemed like the director that's not, like, very traditional. So I'm guessing, like, yeah, watching his back catalogue and understanding what it's pretty much just going in with a reference point, understand.
Yeah, definitely. I want to go back to what you were saying, Connor, about the acting being very weird. And that's something that I really love about his films generally. Like, he always has actors and, like, dialogue and writing that's just really strange and, like, obviously artificial. And it's like, it makes it almost, like, quite awkward to watch at points. Like, there's a lot of, like, just conversations in this film that are just really strange. And, like, there's nothing, like, inherently weird about what they're actually saying. It's just the way they deliver it. It's just super, like, weird and unnerving in a way. Like,
yeah,
that helps. That helps with, like, the portrayal of, like, Hollywood. I think that I feel is very strong in this, because I got, like, the commentary on the Hollywood system on my first go round on this movie. So I think that sort of feeds into, I mean, you look at, like, really shit movies, or, like the acting is just terrible, but it's like the acting in here is, like, it's not terrible, it's, like, really good, but it's, like, supposed to make you feel that kind of way.
Yeah. Well, like Chris was saying about it being awkward, it's, like, I first noticed it when Betty arrives in Hollywood, and she's, like, looking around, she's like, where's my bags? And the taxi driver just, like, she looks back, and he's just like, where you headed? I was like, what? It wasn't how the scene played, it was just how it was done. It was just so, like, it wasn't bad, but it was just like, what?
Do you like the part of the beginning where, like, these people are just dancing, and it's just, like, layers upon layers of the shots with people dancing, and then, like, Betty's there with these two old people or something?
yeah, I
Is that
didn't
literally the introduction of the film?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it starts.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that till watching it this time around, and I realised that after there's that plot twist where you find out about Betty's real identity, she like says about how she won a dancing competition or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't
See, this
notice that
stuff
till this
I've
time
never-
around.
Didn't notice.
Yeah, I just thought it was just a random
Yeah.
thing that he threw in at the beginning.
Well, it's a lot to take in. There's so many moving parts to this movie. I love when Adam, the director, goes back to his house and he finds his wife in bed with Billy Ray Cyrus, and then he takes her jewelry and mixes it up with a bunch of paint, and
Was
then
that
she's like,
Billy
"You-"
Ray Cyrus?
Yeah.
Yeah. She sees him take her jewelry, and she's like, "You bastard!" And then Billy Ray Cyrus is like, "He's probably upset, Lorraine." He's really good in this movie. I love him.
Yeah.
Mate, I fucking did not even recognise that was Billy Ray Cyrus. The guy from Hannah Montana, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, that is his primary role.
Fucking
Both
hell.
his
That's
scenes
the
are
only thing
really
I've ever
funny.
seen him in.
To be fair, same. Yeah, both his scenes are really funny. Like I love the it's like that really bright jazz music that's playing, and it makes it weirdly comical. And I love the scene where the hitmen come in asking for where the director is. He just keeps calling his name and then punches his wife and Billy Ray Cyrus and still is calling his name out.
Yeah. So much of this movie is really comical. I love how that's a good thing about David Lynch as well. He knows how to put comedy into his movies without it seeming forced. It's just the situations, when you're watching this movie or any of his movies, they're presented in such a weird way that an absence of comedy would probably feel weird. So you need these moments to sort of take you back and just be like, yeah, this is the kind of film that we're watching.
Yeah, but I think it's done in such a way where obviously it's meant to be comedic, but when we watch it, we're like, yeah, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's you should, maybe it's got the kind of vibe where you feel like you shouldn't be laughing at it, but it is just inherently funny. Like when Adam gets a call from his assistant or something, she's like, "You got to meet the cowboy." So he goes up to this ranch in the middle of the night, meets this cowboy, and he's talking really seriously about this film. He's like, "You got to cast Camilla Rhodes as the main actress. You got to say this is the girl." And then he's like, "You will see me one more time if you do good. You'll see me two more times if you do bad." And I'm like, what the hell is happening?
That scene made me laugh because he's on the phone to his assistant, and she's like, "Do you wanna? If you need a place to stay, you can stay around mine." He's like, "No, it's fine. I'll find somewhere." And she's like, "You're missing out on a good time." And he's like, "Run along now, little." What? And then he meets this cowboy, and the lights start flickering. I'm like, who is operating these lights? This is an entrance.
I think the funniest scene for me is the scene with the hitman where he accidentally shoots someone and he has to
through the wall.
Yeah, so he shoots this guy, and then when he's cleaning the gun, accidentally shoots it and shoots this woman in the butt, and then he tries to kill her and cover it up, and there's a janitor who sees it, and he calls him into the room and then shoots him, and he shoots this vacuum cleaner that he's got, and then all the lights and the alarms start going off in the building. It's just so ridiculous.
It's literally that yeah, you're watching that and you're just it just unfolds, and he's he shoots him, shoots the girl in the ass, tries to kill her, drags her into the other room, and he's like, "You've got to help me." Pardon me. He's like, "You've got to help me, she's injured, I can't do everything on my own." Just pulls her in, and this janitor just mongingly walks up the corridor and just walks in.
Yeah, it's just it's
was
a
a great
perfect
scene.
example of David Lynch's sense of humor as well.
I think me and this guy would get along very well. I would put up with his weirdness.
Yeah.
He's crazy. He's just on YouTube now, just doing weather reports. He's just it's sunny today. Slight chance of precipitation, 14 degrees.
It's like that weather forecaster out of Family Guy. What's it like? It's raining. Thanks.
He also does I think it's a daily thing where he says, "What number is it today?" And he basically just has this big glass ball that's got loads of tiny little tennis balls or something with numbers on it, and he just shakes it around and pulls out a number every single day.
Again, these directors, strange bunch.
He's got to do something in lockdown to
I also
keep
get a
him
lot
busy.
about I get a lot about like identity and how I think people belong to others or aren't who they're perceived to be. You get that a lot with like the different names of and people who look similar to each other. Like there's like a moment in this where I feel we go into a different universe or like an alternate reality where everything's kind of the same but things are just different. Like Betty and Rita have different names. Like Betty's the one who was down on her luck after trying to get into the film business, and Rita, who's now called Camilla, she's just this really big superstar. I found that really interesting. Like I didn't understand what the hell was happening the first time. I was like, all right, I guess we're doing this, even though like their names are different and just like the things are changed. And Betty lives in this hovel now, just disgusting hole, and she looks awful. I have no idea what was going on, but I kind of understand it a bit better now, I would say. Because they go into like this blue box thing. The camera zooms into this blue box, and then we're in this other world. So like that's what I got from that.
Yeah, I still don't really understand what happens there, or like what like the actual like timelines and stuff of the film are and how it all links together. But I don't have a problem with that. I like the fact that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And
That's exactly how I feel throughout the whole movie. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna watch it and pretend like I know what's going on.
Yeah, that entire like
I got the sense
third
that
act is
Betty
just an
was-
absolute mind fuck. Like some of it's like quite
Oh yeah.
disturbing, but most of it's just like really confusing and strange, and I just don't really understand a lot of it.
Yeah, there's like the part where they come out of the house, and then like this weird effect happens, and I figured this was like quite a while into the movie as well. But I think that up until then, things had been like relatively normal when you're talking about like a David Lynch movie, I guess. But then after that, things just go crazy.
Yeah, you got the
After watching this,
no, carry
I
on.
definitely think at some point I'm gonna need to like bunch up a list of all the movies we've watched and just highlight the ones that I've like just not made sense of, and I will just have to sit down and watch them again and just see if I can understand them just a little bit more.
Yeah, that's the problem when you recommend movies like this that you need to watch. You definitely do need to watch them a second time, even a third time, especially with Mulholland Drive. It's just this crazy film that you can't really make sense of unless you've seen it like 10 times or whatever. It's just, yeah, I think that we do recommend those kinds of films on this podcast, but I think it's good to get a variety, you know.
I think Paranormal Ascendancy is one of those films where you really have to watch it a few times to like understand what's going on.
No.
So I would recommend you guys watching that maybe a second or third time to really understand
I've already
the
seen it
direction
like
where
a
the director
second
was
time.
taking the
now.
film. What? Oh, yeah, what, for your YouTube video?
Yeah, pretty much have to watch the whole film again while writing it.
Oh, you poor man. You poor
Yeah.
man.
I've got a lot of different scenes like written down that I love. One that's quite early on in the film is that it's quite an iconic scene now of the two characters like discussing a dream in Winkies, the restaurant that comes back a lot in the film, and like these two characters are like, just discussing this dream that one of them had, and then they walk out like, 'cause he's like, I saw this person over here, and he's just this like jump scare where this weird like homeless person like just comes out from behind this wall. It's just such a great scene. Like I find it super creepy but really weird, and I think that jump scare is like really great as well.
That so the guy that's delivering that little monologue where he's talking about his dream, that's I thought I recognised him from somewhere, and he's an actor in, well, I say an actor, he just played like an episode in Grimm.
Yeah, he does a
It has
lot of
nothing to do with
like
this
talking
movie,
about-
but
Yeah, he's like talking about his dream. He's like, I'm sitting here, and you're at the cash register, and you look at me, and you look frightened, more frightened than I've ever seen you. And then I look through the wall. It's him. He's the one who's doing it. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And it's like, he hopes he never sees that face outside of a dream. And then he goes out of the Winkies. What a name. And then he goes around the corner, and there's just this weird, like, troll thing. And then he dies, like, out of fright. I'm like, holy shit. There's also, like, a picture behind the scenes of David Lynch, like, with his arm around that troll actor as well. It's really funny.
Isn't that on one of the art cards that come with the Blu-ray?
Oh, God, I don't know. I don't think so.
Fair enough.
That'd be cool, though.
Yeah. I love Betty's audition scene where she's like auditioning for this big role.
Yeah.
And it's like she's acting like in a really sensual and like sexualized way. I think it's like a perfect example of what those auditions actually are like and how like sexualized the film industry is, especially when it comes to the treatment of women. And I think Naomi Watts is just incredible in that scene.
Yeah, she's really good. You just get sort of taken away with that scene. You forget that you're watching the movie that you're watching, and you get transported into this scene that they're acting within a movie. And that guy was like really creepy as well. It's like this old guy. He's like, hey, Bobby, I want to play this one nice and close. Oh, shut up, man.
Maybe this guy was like a representation of Harvey Weinstein before Harvey Weinstein.
Maybe.
Get a lot of creepers like that in the industry. He says
hey
Bobby, I want to play this one nice and close. Yeah. He says, like we did with that other one with the black hair. And I was like, does he mean like Rita? Because she loses her memory. She has to like get her name from a poster that she sees inside this house. So I think that was her. I'm pretty sure. And it's like this thing where I think Betty is trying. I think it's like when we see the alternate reality, it's like Rita's the one who's successful, except now she's called Camilla. And they were in the other reality they were supposed to cast Camilla as the girl in the movie, so she's the girl in the movie, I guess. And there's like this thing that I feel like Betty is very self-obsessed in the original universe, where she's trying to make Rita like her. She sees a lot of herself in her, maybe, or like she gives her like a wig and then she starts looking like her. And then there's like this whole thing to do with like identity as well. I think like Betty tells Rita that she's in love with her when they like have sex, and she's like, because this is after she's got the wig, so I think Betty sees her as herself, and she loves that, like the idea of like being a star, and so she sees like this personification of herself in another person, and then in the other reality, it's like she wasn't able to do that, or like she wants to be where Camilla, who was Rita in the original universe, is in this universe.
Yeah, he kind of with Naomi Watts' characters like paints the two sides of Hollywood, where you got like the first half which like represents like that blissful Hollywood dream where you think you'll go there and everyone will love you and you'll like be successful and stuff, and like the second half is like the reality and how like you get destroyed by its falsities if you try and dive deep into it and don't have the talent or aren't attractive enough.
Yeah. There's a waitress at like the Winkies as well, and she always has like a different name every time you see her. Or like in the first place she was called Diane, and that reminded Rita of Diane Selwyn, and then that was like sort of mirrored in the other reality where Betty, who's now called Diane in the other reality, sees the waitress, and the waitress is called Betty. There's just these parallels here that I probably picked up on more this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna need to watch this film a second time.
It'd probably help.
There's
Fuck you, David Lynch, making me watch films twice.
Yeah. There's one other scene I want to mention because it's a scene I really love. It's the Club Silencio scene. I love the build up to it. Like you got Rita basically waking up in the middle of the night, just loudly saying Silencio, which is just really eerie. then they go into the club where there is a woman singing a Latin cover of Crying by Roy Orbison, and basically it's just her lip syncing it pretty much, and then she just like passes out, and you've got the two girls sitting in the audience like crying during it. It's just, I think it's an incredible scene, like just the camera work, the music, all fantastic. I love how dreamlike it looks. The song choice is great, and just something about it is just super powerful and emotional to me, and I don't really know why, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I get that. I got that like the first time I watched it. You were like, there's one point that I always cry when I watch it. I'm like, it's that scene. It's absolutely that scene. Because it's very filled with emotion. You can see how emotional the Rita and Betty are getting. There's like, it's all recorded. It is an illusion. No hay banda. And like, I think that also speaks to like the portrayal of Hollywood as well, where I think like if sure it's all an illusion, it's all recorded, but they're still getting this emotional reaction from it anyway. So I think like you get like film purists being like, oh, this isn't real art because it doesn't do this, or like it's factory made, and it's like you can still make a factory movie and have it be important. You can still have it be influential and have people emote like you would in like some sort of art house movie, you know? Just yeah.
Yeah, I think he packs a lot into that one scene. I think it is quite possibly my favourite scene in any film ever made. There's just something about it I just really love. Yeah, it just blows me away every time I watch it.
You get like the old man who was in the hotel showing Adam to his room come out onto the stage. I think I noticed that this time. I was like, was he staying at the Silencio? I guess he was. Where it's like this like seedy place, and in the background, like you go into all the rooms and they're like not very nice to look at, or it's not a very nice place to be in. Then you go onto this stage and it's beautiful and everyone's loving it and acting like really emotional towards it.
Yeah. Just generally a great scene. In the original DVD that I owned of the film before getting the Blu-ray, there was like there was like a little booklet inside that had David Lynch's 10 clues to unlocking this thriller. There's like 10 clues to pay attention to understand the film.
What, this film specifically, Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, which is really weird because he never normally does that. Like, he likes confusing people and people like going away not understanding what they've watched.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy who, like, if you asked him today, I don't think he could even tell you what half the movie is even about.
Yeah.
It just makes so little sense that he's even like, I don't know. Not a clue.
Yeah, and there's like a documentary on the Twin Peaks Blu-ray where one of the actors is like, I walked past the room when David Lynch was in the editing room once, and he was watching a scene back and he went, you know what? I think that was what I was trying to do then when I was making that. It's like, apparently David Lynch doesn't even understand sometimes what he means.
But that's like art, you know? It's like this sort of art in its purest form is like you're in the moment and you're trying to express what you're feeling in that moment, and maybe it doesn't make sense to you afterwards, but it made sense while you were making it. I love that about David Lynch.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense now, but it definitely made sense to him when he was making it. But there are also like times where I just think that David Lynch has been and I'm gonna do this just because I want to do it. Like, it's weird, you know?
And then he's like, oh shit, yeah, that's what I was going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets like apparently like pretty much all of like his surreal imagery and stuff just comes from his dreams, and like I can't imagine having dreams that weird and vivid.
Yeah, he has some weird dreams, man. You like see a lot of his shorts that he does, or like the art that he makes, like his sculptures or his paintings, and you're like, oh my, what kind of dreams are you having, man? These are so weird.
He's not an
Maybe
okay
he's a lot of
person.
cheese before bed.
That wouldn't surprise me. He seems like the sort of person that like would eat cheese and drink a glass of wine before bed every night.
Just to have the most fucked up dream he can possibly have.
Yeah. The film originally was meant to be a TV show. Like, it was meant to be a spin-off of Twin Peaks at one point, which was like his TV show he made. And he made this pilot, but the pilot wasn't picked up. And Studio Canal, the studio who financed the film, basically gave David Lynch $7 million to take the pilot and complete it, like film loads of new scenes and turn it into a film. So a lot of it was meant to be a TV show at one point, and it just never happened.
Well, it works as a film, honestly. It works as just this big 2.5 hour hit, and you get out of it and you're like, what the hell was any of that?
Not 2.5 hours, is it? Hour and 45 minutes.
2.5 hours.
Oh. Well, the DVD the Blu-ray that you gave me, the back of it was like an hour and 47 minutes or something. It didn't feel like 2.5 hours. Maybe because I was expecting it to be like an hour and a half.
Yeah. No, it is. It's like 2 hours 20.
Jesus. That's like when I looked at the time for Braveheart and I was like, oh, this film's fucking 3 hours long.
Yeah, that was how I felt. That's how I felt watching it as well, but we'll get into that.
Could you imagine if we watched this in like the normal format where we just binge all the films in one day? This would have been a fucking long marathon.
Yeah.
It would have been. Yeah.
I think I would have had to have taken a long break after this film because it just drains me every time I watch it.
This was the first film.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think that would be... Like, if we did this while we were just sitting here all together and we had to, like, watch Mulholland Drive first and then, like, immediately after watch something else, that would be, like... That would almost be like a disservice to the film, honestly, because I do always, like, once it ends, I sit through the entirety of the credits, just like sit back and like just go, what? And like, if I just turn something on like immediately after, I don't know. I don't think a lot of it would seem less important, maybe.
Yeah, I watched the Muppet Show straight after because I thought I needed something light-hearted instead.
That is almost like when I used to watch horror movies and get scared at night and I'd watch like a comedy or something. It was usually Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, just to like chill myself out before going to bed.
Yeah, and this is quite creepy in a lot of ways. So it does have that. I think a lot of David Lynch movies are quite creepy. I love like the music as well. It sort of reminded me of, I've been getting into Twin Peaks recently, and I think Angelo Badalamenti's score is just really fantastic.
Yeah, he's one of my favourite composers. I love him. His scores aren't like really flashy or like stand out or memorable, but they're like very moody and like subtle and atmospheric. Like, he does a great job of creating tension, and I just love what he does in this film especially.
He creates a vibe, that's for sure.
Anything else to add to this movie? I'm done, by the way. Like, I'm just happily here listening to your guys' interpretation of this film because I did not get a lot of this. So it's quite interesting to hear you guys talking about it, because then I think back to like certain things in the film and I'm like, oh yeah, like when you guys mentioned about the take on Hollywood, where it's like the lack of creativity or the restrictions you have for films. It's like I was just sitting here thinking back to the scene where he goes into the meeting with the guys, and like with the film execs, and they're like, he's like, oh, that's my film, and they're like, yeah, it's not anymore, and it's like, it's pretty much just almost like a representation of how studios. This is the exact same thing with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Studios take too much control within films and don't let the director
compromise their vision.
Really express their art in that film or in said films.
Although going off the trailers and pictures of the Justice League film, maybe it was a good idea they didn't give him complete control over that.
Mate, it looks so much worse.
Yeah, like have you seen? But I think you guys seen that like picture of the Joker as Jesus?
Yeah.
No.
I thought we were free of Jared Leto's Joker after we got Joaquin Phoenix's one. I was like, oh, but no, we're straight back in.
You can't have that kind of interfering with a David Lynch movie, though. Not on that level, at least.
I
he,
can imagine from
about
what you
that, I
guys say. So I was just gonna say, I can imagine from what you guys say, David Lynch will just like lose his shit if anyone tries to take too much control of his movies. I can imagine he's just like the sort of director that will just act like the director did in this movie, where he started smashing up the guy's cars.
Yeah. His third film was his version of Dune, and that's like he hates that film because the amount of like studio interference there was. Like they were constantly making him change his vision, and they were constantly controlling him. And I watched it like less than a week ago for the first time, and it's an absolute mess. It was just terrible. And then ever since that, he's basically, when he's making a film, he says straight up to begin with, he has complete creative control and there's no studio interference at all. And if they want to interfere, he won't make the thing with them. And I think that's part of the reason why he hasn't made a lot of films in total.
Yeah, I think I like a healthy middle ground with David Lynch. Maybe he doesn't have like studio interference, but maybe just people he can work with who he's close to that maybe can steer certain ideas in the right direction. Because like I think I heard from you, Chris, that Inland Empire was basically just him and only him, like solely his idea. And I really hated that movie so much because it was just like this whole just mess of just bollocks, you know.
Yeah.
And I got out of it and I was like, not only was that nothing, it was really boring and none of it made even the slightest bit of sense and looked horrible and like just nothing resonated with me at all with that. But when you have people who are working on a project with you who are also passionate about that idea, you can get a lot of great results. I think that's probably what happened with Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, just working cohesively.
Yeah, this saw him get his third Best Director Oscar nomination. His third and most recent one. He didn't win a single Best Director Oscar, but last year he won an honorary award for fearlessly breaking boundaries in pursuit of his singular cinematic vision, as the Oscars said.
Very nice.
So
it's like flies in the face of what they're about too. It's weird.
Yeah.
So
or at least what they're about like now, you know.
So I googled that picture that Max was on about David Lynch with that homeless guy, and I think I found the right picture. It literally just looks like he's sitting next to an ape. Right? No, before I say that,
sounds about right.
Yeah, like literally. Just from the way the guy is dressed with his face paint as well, it literally just looks like he's sitting next to a monkey out of Planet Apes. You know, the very old ones where it was just people in fucking suits. It's like
ones
that.
from the 60s.
So
that's great. It's a great.
I don't know about you boys, but I'm ready to rate this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, this is obviously the kind of movie that you could talk about endlessly if you felt the need to. But I think it's good to call it time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said before, David Lynch is my favourite director, and this is probably my favourite film by him. I'd probably go as far as to say this is like a top 5 all-time favourite of mine. I just discover something new every time I watch it, and it's a film that I never get bored of, and I think I could probably watch like millions of times before I die. It's just a film that resonates with me very deeply in different ways. I'm going to give it 10 coffees out of 10.
Coffee!
Very good
when I first
impression,
watched
Max.
this movie, I could have done it louder, but I didn't want to annoy the neighbours. And the window's open, so they would definitely hear it.
It's that neighbour, he's being fucking weird again.
When I first saw this movie, I didn't rate it. I thought it was like insane. I had no idea what to think of it. And the second time I watched it, I had more of an idea. I was just like, I still kind of don't really understand what's going on. And the third time I've watched it, I understand a bit more, but there are a lot of things that I still have absolutely no idea about. But it's very viscerally affecting to me, and I love the journey that the film takes me on. It's definitely my favorite David Lynch movie, and again, yeah, one of my favorite movies. So I'm glad to have been introduced to it by Chris all those months ago. I'm going to give it 10 coffees out of 10.
Right, so I haven't had no idea what was going on through a lot of this movie. And I'll say this with every movie where it's one of those films where you have to watch it more than once. That the review that I give is probably not going to be the most accurate because of that reason. Maybe if I'd watched it 2 or 3 times, yeah. So I'm just going to base this upon how I felt watching the movie as well. At which case I'm going to have to give it a 4 out of 10. The film wasn't bad, but because I had no idea what was going on for a lot of it, it made it very hard to be interested in. And not only that, I'm very, very new to David Lynch's films, so his style of directing I'm not accustomed to. But as I say with all of the rating, but just from how I feel at the moment, it's definitely a 4. Also, my laptop just froze, so all the review that you just heard is just gonna sound like a massive hiss.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry, boys. I know it's only
lovely.
it's only like a small portion of it, so we'll be fine. I chat shit anyway, so
You should
Yeah.
watch some more David Lynch movies. Do a race
Yeah.
ahead.
I want to watch this.
That'd be a fun
I
one.
want to of like, why you both hate it and why Kai gets really annoyed when you say you hate it.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's a movie that I wouldn't be opposed to watching again, honestly. Even though I hated it with my very soul.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
we'll
I want-
recommend it at one point.
Yeah, I want to get Kai on to do a guest episode for that film at some point.
Mhm.
We should get Reed on as well and just let them have their debate.
Yeah, we'll leave and just have them on.
Right,
All right.
Max, away you go.
I had a movie recommended last episode. It is directed by Mel Gibson from the year 1995. It is called Braveheart. In the late 13th century, William Wallace revolts against the English who occupy Scotland after his new wife is murdered by English soldiers. Wallace leads the Scots in the First War for Scottish independence against King Edward I of England, who they also call Longshanks, seeking freedom from their oppression and revenge for his lost love. What? Huh?
I will be honest, when this film ended and it came up in big letters, the first thing you see after this film ends is directed by Mel Gibson. I don't know why, I just burst out laughing. I was like, fuck off, did Mel Gibson direct this film?
Yeah.
Do you know what?
It starred.
This did not feel like 3 hours. I strangely enjoyed this movie. Which is, like, obviously I've seen Mel Gibson and other stuff. And I've seen, like, clips of this movie. Obviously there's the whole meme about they may take our lives, they may not take our freedom, and all of that sort of shit. But, yeah, I enjoyed it. Now, the story plot where it's his new wife dies and then he just revolts against the system that is causing tyranny. Obviously this came out way before Spartacus did, so Spartacus is obviously whatever it is. But I enjoyed Mel Gibson's acting in this. It was some of the scenes were just funny to watch. Like when he's meeting up with like that girl that he makes his wife, and like his dad says like, her dad says, oh, you can't like see my daughter anymore, and it's like the next day or something, he's just on a horse really far away, waving at her from the distance, and then just disappears when the dad looks. I was like, what?
Yeah, I enjoyed this film a lot. I definitely wasn't as in love with it as Max was. Like going off of his rating on Letterboxd, but I did think it was great. Like I didn't really enjoy the last hour as much as the first 2 hours, but it's like one of those films where I don't think you can deny just how well made it is. Like just on a technical level in terms of like scope and all of that, it's just like a big feat what Mel Gibson was able to do with this film.
Absolutely.
Very good looking film, like for when it was made.
it's an epic. It's an absolute epic. It's 3 hours long. It's this huge scale. All these moving parts, different like thousands and thousands of extras they got here. It was written by a descendant of William Wallace. So like I think Mel Gibson tried to get in contact and communicate with a lot of his descendants to see like how it should be written and how the movie should be made. Oh yeah, as Chris said, I love this movie. I adore it. It's absolutely amazing. I already sort of knew about like the kind of story that it was telling. It's not like it's based on a true story, but a lot of it is not accurate to what happened, and I think a lot of Scottish people don't like it for that. But as it stands, and just from what I got out of it, I thought it was a very fulfilling experience for me. And just I mentioned like last episode about just like when you see a great movie with some like really good sword fights or like set in this time, it's amazing. It's really epic, and I think that the production is astounding. I think that the acting is really good. William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson said that he thought he was maybe like 10 years too old to play this character, but when all said and done, I do think he puts on a really good performance. And yeah, I just I kind of expected to really like this movie, but I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. It's just like a classic tale, you know.
You saying that Mel Gibson thought he was 10 years too old to play this role, yeah, that really showed when he marries this girl that in the flashbacks is maybe 4 years younger than him. Pardon me. And then when they grow up, Mel Gibson has just, like, if they're playing the same, like, sort of, like, 4 to 5, maybe 7-year age difference between them both, Mel Gibson looks fucking old compared to her. Like, she looks maybe early to mid-20s, and he looks early 30s.
Yeah, the character of William Wallace is meant to be in his mid-20s, and Mel Gibson was near on 40 when they made the film.
Yeah,
the problem is that there doesn't exist to be a lot of information about William Wallace from that time. There wasn't a lot of documentation, so a lot of it they did have to make up. And obviously it is heavily fictitious. So I guess it goes with the kind of story that they're trying to tell. So I think a lot of what we see from the character, maybe it has been made up, but I was impressed by the performance of it, and I think that he came across as very believable.
Yeah, it's just the premise of the film. I mean, William Wallace was brittle. Obviously, he fought for freedom. That's the basis of the story. You have a start and an end, how he starts, how he gets there. Obviously, if we don't have a lot of documentation about the person themselves, as long as you're keeping true to, obviously, who he was, what he stood for, and what he tried to do, I mean, I can understand taking liberties in the film can be a bit of an insult to some people, but I thought it was portrayed very well.
Yeah, I think it's done really well.
You can take as many creative liberties as you want when you portray these kinds of stories, honestly. Like, it's not a documentary. It's a piece of, like, it's a film, a fictitious film, you know? Like, parts of it are based on real life and a lot of it is fictitious, but I think when you examine the film on its own as its own thing, separate from the events that actually took place, it comes together very well.
Yeah, there are some incredible scenes. Like, when you think of when this film was made, and like the battle scenes, just how many people they had on set at one time, because this was like way back in this was decades ago, capable of inserting people like Avengers, for example. You maybe have a fraction of the actual characters you see on screen. The rest of it is just CGI'd. I mean, this was just all... Yeah, it was practical. So when you kind of think
you can do
that scope of it...
Yeah, back in the 90s, you definitely could do like a lot of rotoscoping. Maybe it's not like as pristine as it looks today, but like they didn't need to do that because a lot of what they shot was practical. Like they really did have all these extras, all these horses, all these like the weaponry and the outfits. I think when you look at like the horses like dying, I think a lot of them are apparently like no horses were harmed, so we've got that going for the film. And so like they've just like built these horses out of like different materials, and apparently like if you look for it, you can definitely tell that the horses are not real. But I kind of wasn't looking at that in that way, so I never really picked out like, oh, that wasn't real, that wasn't real. It just all felt very authentic, especially because when you use practical effects, that's the kind of that's the thing that you command from the audience. It's like what you're seeing is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Mel
Did this have the
Gibson was
guy-
investigated by an animal welfare organisation because they were like convinced that he used real horses, and like he had to show them like videotape footage of the location to show that they were fake.
Can you guys give me literally 2 minutes? I need to answer the front door. I don't think anyone else is in.
Yeah, that's cool.
I do apologise for that. One of my housemates has ordered KFC, and they just left it outside. This is the only annoying part about having a bedroom at the front of the house. If someone knocks the door, I'm just like, if I'm busy, like doing this podcast, I'm like, do I really want to get up and answer that fucking door?
Yeah, I'm the
But is this
exact
got
same.
the actor from In Bruges?
Yeah.
Brendan Gleeson,
Yeah, mate.
he's in this.
He was he was fucking hilarious in this movie. Probably because I just kept picturing him as the guy from In Bruges. But I loved it when Mel Gibson came back to his like hometown after like years of being away, and the guy's just like, "Oh, can you throw this rock?" And just like starts having this rock competition, and Mel Gibson just picks up this little stone. He's like, "If you can hit me, hit me." And he just throws this rock, misses him, and Mel Gibson just launches this little rock back and just twats him in the face.
Yeah, calls back to like when they were throwing rocks as kids.
Yeah.
And William Wallace was the only person who could hit anything.
I loved like all the acting in this film. It was just really good. Especially
Brendan
Mel
Gleeson
Gibson.
suits a ponytail.
Does
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
full like bearded, muscly guy? Yeah,
Maybe if he played that role in Bruges, he wouldn't have died.
Maybe.
rip.
Mel Gibson is very good in the film, but I do feel like his Scottish accent can be a little bit iffy at points. A lot of people are like heavily critical of it and say it's like really fake, and I don't think it's that bad. Like it's still decent, but I don't think it's like super great or anything.
No, there's obviously one of my housemates is Scottish from Glasgow, I think, and like listening, like as soon as I watched this film, we had like me and a few housemates had dinner, and I was just like, yeah, Mel Gibson can do a Scottish accent, but it's nowhere near as genuine as the real thing. Even just some of the phrases they use, some of it was not a lot of it, but just a little bit was just a bit off. But then again, that's coming from someone that can't even do my own native accent correctly. So what the fuck can I say?
They're utilising a lot of like old Scottish language as well, like Gaelic. That works its way into the movie very well. Maybe you don't understand what they're saying, but I think I never got the sense that
Did Max just call me dumb?
Mel Gibson was like a. I never got the sense that like Mel Gibson was like a bad. He did like the accent terribly. It wasn't like bad, I don't think, and I never really got taken out of the film.
It was,
with maybe sometimes his accent slipping,
yeah,
but it just that's not really what it was about. For
No,
me,
it
though.
was-
It was
it-
more about like seeing these like huge fights and like the spectacle of like sacking these cities and like all the extras and just the epicness of it, you know.
Yeah, of course, it didn't like bring the film down or ruin it for me. It was just a point I had.
Yeah.
I think it's only going to be either actual Scottish people that notice it or like movie buffs, like very critical people, because it weren't bad, like not at all. I believed it throughout the whole movie. Like I said, there were some parts that were a bit iffy, but it's just is what it is. Mel Gibson.
I think if you're looking for things to pick holes in, you're gonna find them. You know.
Oh yeah, of course. Fucking one of the most confusing lines in that film is when he's talking about, "Can I see your daughter?" And they're like, "No, it's raining outside. Know thee now." And he's like, "No, now the no," or some shit. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds Scottish." Like sometimes with my housemate, when I first moved into my current place, and I was like first getting to know my housemate who's Scottish, some of the shit that she was saying, I was like, can you Google Translate that for me, please? So it helped, like, watching this movie, because a lot of the phrases I was like, yeah, I know what that means. And it like just helped understanding it a bit more. But yeah, it's a very fucking it's just a language that's just, even though it's English, because of the phrases they use and just how fucking how can I say it, prominent their fucking accent is. It's very different to anything that we have.
Yeah, I prefer that. I always prefer that though. I don't want to see people like dumbing it down for an audience that isn't like immersed in that culture. I don't want to see that. Like, I just want to. Like, I had subtitles on anyway, so it really didn't bother me. But if you're gonna portray this kind of period with these types of people who lived in this area, then you're gonna want it to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that they really did that.
That's one thing
Yeah,
that
like,
I don't get about the whole. Sorry, just want to say that's not full character in the Marvel movies. He starts off talking very old English, and just it drops after the first film.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it was very authentic.
That's something I love about the film The Witch. Like, all of that was written in old English, and it's really great. Like, just the way it's utilized.
That is the film with the girl
I
from
just love-
New Mutants in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the writing overall. I think it's really brilliant. Like, some of these speeches are just like so enthralling. You just take you away. Like, obviously the big one is, they may take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. And then it's like, you're just there. Like, there's a lot before that. I didn't do the accent right. Sorry.
You sounded like you were
but then-
trying to do like a very high pitched Mexican accent. They may take our lives, eh? They may take our freedom.
It's like Reed's New Mutant voice.
But then, like you always hear that line, they may take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. And it's like, all right, that's the line that's synonymous with this film. You think of that line, you think of this film. Or you think of this film, you think of that line. But there's a lot that comes before that in that same speech that just so well written.
That speech.
And like a lot of...
Carry on, sorry.
It just hypes you up. It hypes you up for the... And it's like an hour and a half in, there's this huge battle. And I'm like, this is like a climax battle. But then it just like, it goes on for another hour and a half. And you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And it doesn't get dull for me. It doesn't get dull or worse. It's just like, that's the kind of... That happens here. And then we do these other things. And it's not like, it doesn't dampen what happens after it. But it's like, it feels necessary to be there. You know?
Yeah. Well, back to that speech before he even says, like, they may take our lives. Yeah, well, the famous line. It's like he just says, like, yeah, you can run away and you'll live, but when you're on your deathbed, the years that are from now until then, you would give up just to come back to tell your enemies that you want your freedom. And I was like, yes, very well written.
Yeah, even though I hadn't seen this film before, like watching through it, there was like so many lines that I've heard before, and I don't know where I've heard them from. There was just so many lines and stuff that I recognise, I've heard. Maybe it's like parodied somewhere or quoted somewhere else, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff I've heard since then, which I feel like is just a testament to how iconic a lot of the film is.
Yeah, I was so
very
surprised
ubiquitous,
at
yeah.
a lot of the quotes that I've heard. But to be fair, I thought I had seen this film in school, but it was Macbeth. It wasn't this.
Yeah.
Before we let you leave, your commander must cross that field, present himself before the army, put his head between his legs and kiss his own arse. I love that too.
Wait,
I like
I
the
love,
bit where
like,
they're
there's,
all on the...
Obviously, the...
No, carry on.
So I was just going to say, there's like this thing where the King Edward Longshanks, he goes to his noblemen, and because he's trying to take over Scotland, like, bit by bit, I guess he's already in control of Scotland. It's English occupied, but he's like, I don't even want there to be Scottish people here. So as soon as the Scottish people get married, you go to them and then have sex with their wives, and then their children will be English, and we'll keep doing that until there's no Scottish people there. And that's like a horrible thing. It was like really like this visceral thing when they went and like captured this guy's wife. I forget his name.
Yeah.
But then like he gets revenge on them afterwards. He's like, "Remember me? I never did any harm. It was my right. I didn't do any harm."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I'm here to claim the right of a husband," and he smashes his skull in. It's so epic.
Mate, I like talking about that. I love the scene where the king's son's wife is like begging for him to spare the life of William Wallace, and the son's just like, no. So she just like kneels down to the king, who can't speak at the moment, and she's like, "Your bloodline ends with your son," because obviously Mel Gibson's character had fucked her, got her pregnant. And I thought that was just so funny that he's, in the beginning of the film, he was saying, "We'll breed out the Scots by stealing their wives on the day they're married." And then the end of it, she's like, "Yeah, I pretty much did the exact same thing, and your bloodline dies with you and your son."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's just like, you can
Come
just
on.
see he's so pissed off.
Can't do anything about it though, because he's basically dead.
Yeah, you can't talk.
He's like dying slowly throughout this movie, the king.
Yeah. I love the scene right before there's a big battle where like loads of the Scottish troops just like bend over and moon the English troops. That just made me laugh.
Yeah, after getting shot with arrows, some of their like own men are dead, and they just turn around and start showing their ass. It's like, oh, brilliant.
And then they fire more arrows, and
Mel
some
Gibson
of them haven't
went to,
even like pulled up their trousers yet, so you just see them with their bare asses out with like arrows stuck in them.
Yeah. I think Mel Gibson went to like the set of like Apollo 13. It was directed by Ron Howard or something, or like some other movies as well. And he was like saying that there should be like best moon shot in the Oscars category, and he would submit that scene for his.
They
I gotta love the fight choreography. Like, I think that the fighting, not only is it like there's this massive scale of loads of people there, but it's just really well executed. Like, you see, like, it's really brutal. Like, people getting their faces cut off, like their heads cut off, and their legs cut off.
Mel
and,
Gibson
like,
is
all these
just
people, like,
smashing
being
people in
impaled.
the face with a sledgehammer and like batons.
Yeah, it's really like, it's just like, oh yeah, you like get up and like scream in triumph with the movie. It's like really amazing to see it all.
Yeah, I wasn't that invested in the movie.
Oh, shut up.
The
I'm not
action
going to stand up and
sequences
start screaming.
The action sequences for me were what made me enjoy the film so much. Like, they're just so well done. They're so epic. And like, I think Mel Gibson uses like the perfect amount of gore to show like just how brutal it is without ever getting to the point where it's just like cartoony or unnecessarily over the top or anything. And I also love how like strategical a lot of the battle sequences are. Like, I feel like in some lesser films, like maybe you just like show just people running at each other with swords and it being super messy, but there's like bits where they show like each unit like plotting their moves before executing them, and that sort of stuff I just found really, really well executed.
Yeah, definitely. It's also just like overall a really lovely looking movie. Like, the cinematography is just gorgeous. I think they shot it, a lot of it, most of it was shot in Ireland. Although was like some of it was shot in Scotland, but you can't really tell the difference, honestly. But it just looks amazing. Like, a lot of these like really gorgeous highlands and like the sunsets and all these great battle scenes, they're all just so well put together and edited.
One of my favourite characters, talking about Ireland, was the guy that came from Ireland in the film, the Irish guy. He was just
Stephen.
Yeah, batshit crazy, just talking to God the whole way through the film. Just absolutely, he was so fucking funny to it. Every time he was on like screen, I just like, I was like, oh yeah, I love this guy. He's so funny. Like when he shows up to Mel Gibson's little campsite and he's talking to everyone, and they're like, "Are you talking to the Lord?" He's like, "Yeah." They sometimes say that something about the Irish talking to an equal, so they have to talk to the Lord. He's just absolutely
he was great.
Insane throughout the whole movie.
He was a maniac. He's like, in real life, that actor is Irish. No, he's not. He's Scottish, but he plays an Irishman. And then in real life, Brendan Gleeson is Irish, but he plays a Scotsman. That's really funny.
They probably gave each other tips on their accents, to be fair, then.
Yeah. I think there was like something about like they wanted the God, what was it? Like the Irish. There's a part in one of the battles where before the Irish go onto the field and they just walk up to the Scottish people and start shaking their hands and like being all chummy, and then they join their side. I think in reality the Irish actually fought against William Wallace.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson decided to show the Irish joining forces with the Scots because modern audiences might be confused to see the Irish and the English on the same side, which I get, you know. And the Scottish and the Irish actors also refused to fight each other anyway, so they couldn't have done it.
Watching this film, it just made me dislike English people. That you bastards.
Yeah.
Why'd you have to be such arseholes to the lovely Scots?
Yeah.
I love seeing movies that take down the English a peg.
Yeah. It's the only time I can ever criticise a country or a race without being racist, because it's my own. So you just got to be like, yeah, you bastards.
Yeah. I do have a couple of issues with the film. One of them is like
Oh, go on.
how Wallace like reacts after his wife dies. Like, although he gets his revenge, he like shows like no emotion after her death. He just like strolls up ready to kill. I feel like it takes away any of the power that it's supposed to have. Like, it's supposed to be like this really emotional scene because obviously his wife's dead. It's meant to be the motivation for like the rest of the film, but he just doesn't really seem to care at all.
Does he see her dead body before he buries it?
Don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think he does, because I was watching the movie and I glanced down at my phone to check a message quick, and then I looked back up. I was like, oh shit! Like, 'cause he just strolls up on his horse, and I was like, oh, I've probably missed the part where he's like told about her death, or he sees like her body. So I rewound, and it's not there, and I was just like, oh, and yeah, you never see him properly grieve. And there's a line in the scene where it's his mate, the Irishman playing the Scotsman, I can't remember his name or his character's name, the ginger guy, where he's like, this isn't about like you being a good person, this is about you getting revenge. Or no, this isn't about like you standing up, it's about you acting like a good person because you think she's looking down. And yeah, that's kind of true, but not once. Like, you could kind of think that was his ways of grieving, like doing all this for his wife. But yeah, and they didn't even spend that much time together on screen in comparison.
No.
So I really didn't feel that emotional or that invested when she died, which kind of took away from him doing all this for her. Because I was like, well, you've known her like 10 minutes, you fucked off from this hometown for decades, and then you've come back, and then after like 2 days, you're like, I'm in love with you, I want to marry you. But then that could have
Yeah,
been
that's
very
the issue
normal
I
back
have.
back in them days.
Yeah, I feel that definitely. But I feel like the point of like the rebellion was like that was sort of a catalyst for it. But I think the crux of the rebellion was definitely because like that's like the straw that broke the camel's back, at least for him. Where he's just like come back and like he's the leader these people need.
Yeah.
To get out of the rule of the English. So I didn't really mind that, but I understand where you guys are coming from.
Yeah. My other issue comes like right at the end. I just found like the ending a little bit cheesy. Like with Wallace, like obviously he gets hung, drawn, and quartered at one point. When like right at the end, and just before he's like properly like killed, they're like, "Do you have any last words? Where we'll like, do you want to like?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Do you want to like confess your sins or something, and we'll like
Beg for
end your life
mercy.
quickly?" And yeah, that's it. And he just shouts freedom. It just made me laugh.
And then they
I
end this
just
like-
thought
That
it
was
super
awesome.
cheesy.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, right, he's like, yeah, if you beg for mercy, we'll end it quickly. He says freedom in rebellions, and they just end his life quickly anyway.
Yeah. And then there's also
Yeah.
like the last bit of the film where you got Brendan Gleeson throwing the sword and it's like spinning around in slow motion, and then they start running and screaming. I found that quite corny as well.
Yeah, mate, the sword he throws it, and the sword just lands in the ground, and you're like, brilliant. But a lot of this, like I said, I watched the TV show Spartacus, and I really like that show. So this whole film is so reminiscent of that TV series, or vice versa, because this came out before the TV series. But like, the ending scene of this film is the exact same ending scene as Spartacus, where there's one of the warriors is like being killed, and he's like in Spartacus, the guy's on a cross being nailed there to obviously die a slow death. Spartacus in this, he's like on the bench about to get beheaded, and it's just like, any last words, and they just scream. See, in this case, he screams freedom. In Spartacus, the guy just screams, and you're like, yeah, fair enough, all right. It is very cheesy.
That sword throw wasn't scripted as well. I think they just did it on the day.
Yeah, but did it actually land?
Well, they cut quite a bit, you know. It's not like one fluid throw. I'm pretty sure they had to do it a couple of times. Brendan Gleeson didn't just have that sword and go, I'm going to do this now.
I'm going to fucking launch this, yeet it at the enemies.
They just happen to have a slow motion camera there ready just in case.
Well, you never know what's going to happen on the set of a Mel Gibson movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Anything could happen in a Mel Gibson movie. I think like the parts that you guys are on about that you don't really like as much, maybe I felt that a bit, but I think
hey,
there are definitely problems to this movie. There are. No movie's perfect.
I never said I didn't like him. That was
sure.
Don't lump me in with that boy.
But I think like maybe if I were trying to like really delve into this movie, like the first time I watched it, I was just sort of immersed in it and the story that it was telling. So I do acknowledge those problems with it, but in the end, I got a very affecting experience with it, and I think it's something that I don't get with a lot of films, especially not with a lot of like movies set in this time period. I think a lot of them can rely too heavily on just like, oh, it's a cool sword fight. We don't have to like make the choreography amazing, but like just go along with it because it's cool and they're in armor. So I think this it does it as good as any film could do.
Yeah, I did really enjoy the film. I don't think it's a bad film at all. It's a very great movie. There were just issues I had with it, and I can completely understand people watching it and not picking up those things at all. They were kind of more me nitpicking more than anything.
Yeah, I also understand like maybe Scottish people will watch it and not really like certain aspects of it or how they portray different characters. But I mean, I'm not Scottish, so I can't really say that those things bothered me, I guess. I like the portrayal of Robert the Bruce. I guess he's like this huge figure in Scottish history. Everybody loves him. Apparently people were quite upset with how he was portrayed. I didn't really get that, though. I quite liked him. He's like this ally of William Wallace who eventually betrays him, but he sort of really feels bad about it deep down. And
yeah,
he's like at the end leading the army. So maybe that could have been a little bit cheesy, but I enjoyed it anyway.
Speaking of Robert the Bruce,
he was a good actor. It was a good performance.
Yeah. Speaking of him, there was a sequel in 2019 about him with Angus McFadden reprising the role, which I had no clue about till I was reading up on the film.
Oh wow!
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, it's not very good.
I've seen Outlaw King, which was a recent movie, and that had Chris Pine as Robert the Bruce. And a lot of people don't really like that movie. I like it. It's just like, it's fun, I guess. And that's sort of how I understood a lot of what was going on with the historical aspects of this movie as well. Because I had already been acquainted with that character before, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think the way they portray the historical aspect and stuff and like the world and its politics is done in a way where it's quite easy to understand for the most part. Like, maybe there was a couple bits where I was a little bit like, okay, what's going on right now? But for the most part, I think it was pretty straightforward and executed quite well. Like, there's never a point where it's like overly complicated or there's too much going on, like I think a lot of similar films have done.
Yeah. They don't like bog it down with like loads of like historical facts, I guess. They just take what they know from history and they try to make a movie around it. And maybe it's not supposed to be like a documentary kind of thing, but it's more to do with like the entertainment value, I think.
Yeah. In that that case, it reminds me a bit of the trial of the Chicago 7, which we were talking about doing the complete opposite, where they do like change things for dramatic purposes, but it just comes off as like not very interesting because you don't have any emotional attachment or anything like that. Whereas I felt the opposite here. I didn't really mind the changes they made because I was having such a good time watching the film.
Yeah, people running around, like literally, like Mel Gibson throws a sword into a dude. He
Yeah.
pierces through his chest. It was like crazy. All these crazy stunts. They're so epic and just really interesting to watch. Like I love it from like maybe not like a historical point, but just like I admire the technical aspect of it. Like the choreography is amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot good with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have anything
I like
else
when
to add.
Campbell has like I'll just say one more thing. I like the scene when Campbell has like this arrow wound in his chest and they have to cauterize it, and he's like just like screaming, and he gets up and punches a
Oh, I
guy.
fucking love that. He's like, I'll see you in the morning.
Oh, so I do like the mooning scene. They like get their dicks out and their bum. That's really funny. Just a lot of humor in this movie.
When
as well.
I was in school,
and
carry on. I'll tell the story after.
yeah, so I was just going to go on to like the torture scene at the end. I thought that was very intense as well. So I think they can balance these different moods very well.
Yeah, taking him through like each different type of torture, like hanging him, getting him choked, and then courting him and trying to like getting the horse to ride off and overstretching his limbs. At some point, I was just expecting his shoulder to pop or something, and then just to show like how intense that method of torture would have actually been. And then they just pop him on the little table and behead him. It was good, but it's just like you can see the crowd change as well. Like everyone's like sort of kill him. Also, and then like when they sort of see the severity of the torture, they're just like no mercy. Like they're telling him to say mercy, so they give him a quick send off, and he's like nah.
Freedom. Screams freedom instead. The real William Wallace, he was torn to pieces, hung, drawn, and quartered. His limbs were sent to like the four corners of Britain.
Yeah,
his head was put on a spike and on the London Bridge, and you can see that in Outlaw King as well. It's in that movie. You see his head on a spike on the London Bridge. I like that.
Yeah, they were like, yes, it was a warning, but it didn't have the intended plan that they were looking for.
No, because then Robert the Bruce, I think he just allies a lot of his forces, and he wins the war. Yeah, really interesting part of history. It's a shame that there's not more known about at least William Wallace and who he was as a person. I would like to see maybe a documentary about him.
Yeah, early days there weren't. It's like the 13th century, so I think a lot of the information may have been lost during wars that may have happened and cities being destroyed, and obviously a lot of the people that did know William Wallace probably died in battle, so there's not really many of their descendants that can tell stories of what their ancestors have told them.
Yeah. I'm going to go through like some of the trivia that I found out because I think it's quite interesting. Apparently like several of the major battle scenes had to be reshot because the extras were wearing sunglasses and wristwatches. Jesus, what an oversight.
It's like the old Starbucks cup in a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And the water bottle.
Apparently several frames of the film were removed at strategic points in the battles in order to produce a jarring, startling effect. I definitely felt that, for sure.
Yeah.
What else we got? There's just like this big thing about Mel Gibson saying it's about cinema. It's not about like the historical context of it. He says some people said that in telling the story we messed up history. It doesn't bother me because I'm giving you as a cinematic experience, and I think films are there first to entertain, then teach, then inspire. There probably were historical inaccuracies, quite a few, but maybe there weren't. Who's to say? Because there was very little history about the man. It wasn't necessarily authentic, and some of the stuff I read about him, he wasn't as nice as he was on film. We romanticized it a bit, but that's the language of film. You have to make it cinematically acceptable.
Yeah. I
So,
think
yeah,
that's a big thing whenever you're doing anything with history. It's it's not going to translate perfectly to film. There is some dramatization that has to happen to it in order for it to be entertaining. And like I said at the beginning of this review, as long as they're true with the intentions of what was portrayed in that event, take a bit of liberties, do what you will with it, make it a little bit interesting. Because the way I see it, if you make a film interesting that is like 85% historically correct, there's a lot of people that are going to be seeing that maybe wouldn't have known about that situation, and the only reason they've carried on watching the film is because you made it somewhat interesting by changing a few of the historical details that don't really impact the outcome in a major way, but just it puts it out there to a lot more people.
Yeah. A lot of these old heroes from history were also bastards, you know?
Yeah.
Also, like, horrible people. And maybe they exist in people's minds as doing these great things, but in reality, yes, they did these great things, but they were also, like, human beings, and they had a lot of flaws about them.
Yep.
Because especially, like, back in those times, there's a lot of the things that they did there that were completely acceptable that absolutely would not be acceptable today.
So, should we get on to the ratings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I think we all know what this one's going to be out of.
Mel
Freedoms.
Gibson.
There we go. No, Chris, don't be silly.
Yeah, this is a great movie. It's just a really, really well made, epic film with great action, really good acting. It's just a good experience altogether. I have my issues with it, and I don't think it's an amazing movie or anything. But yeah, it's still a great movie, and I'm going to give it 8 freedoms out of 10.
Come on, give it a bit more passion than that.
I'm afraid that's all I
love
have.
this movie. I think it's amazing.
I wasn't expecting anything more, to be fair.
I'm definitely more passionate about this movie than Chris. It just hit all the right things for me. And I agree with Connor. The time just flew by. It did not feel like 3 hours at all. And I'll definitely watch it again. It's definitely my favorite movie depicting that period in time. And yeah, it's very simple kind of plot wise, I guess, but there's a lot of interesting technical aspects to it that just make it incredibly epic. And you probably should watch it. It's in like the 1001 movies you must see before you die book. So
Yeah,
and a lot of those, maybe a lot of those are not that great, but so maybe that's not a great indicator. But honestly, this is absolutely incredible, and I adore it.
It
So I'm
won
gonna
the
give it-
Best Picture Oscar, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna give it 10 freedoms.
There we
out of
go.
10.
That's what we're after, Chris. We should have all done the review in nothing but terrible Scottish accents.
Yeah. If only.
Mate, how long before someone just broke down and it just became amalgamation between British and bad Scottish?
I think that would have
so
been what
this
it
is
was from the beginning, to be honest.
Yeah. Would have made it a bit more interesting. Yeah. This is another one of those films where I was thinking that I was going to be slightly bored. I didn't go in thinking it was going to be a bad movie, but I was like, fucking 2 hours and 58 minutes. I was like, this is going to drag. But you know what? It flew by. I will agree with Chris slightly that the last hour, or the first 2 hours, are definitely better than the last hour. That's not to say that the last hour of the movie was bad. It just slowed down a fair amount, which I was a fan of, but it just didn't intrigue me as much as the first 2 hours. I liked Mel Gibson in it. I liked all the acting in it. It was fun to watch, entertaining, and I would highly recommend that if you haven't seen this movie, that you watch it. It's on Disney Plus, so you can watch it on there. It's just it was a good movie, very good movie. So I'm gonna give it 8 freedoms out of 10. I don't know what accent I just tried doing, but
Lovely.
Freedoms.
this is 8 freedoms out of 10. Should have just got my housemate to come in and say it for me. I'm giving this 8
Yeah.
out of 10. So, my recommendation this week was Arrival, starring the girl from Man of Steel and Jeremy Renner, and many other actors and actresses that I do not know the names of. So, this film follows an alien arrival that they need what's the character's name from Man of Steel?
I mean, her
Louise
real name is
her name
Amy
in the movie.
Adams.
Her name is Amy Adams.
That's it, Amy Adams. So
Yeah.
Amy Adams' character Louise is brought in as a linguistics expert to translate what this alien race trying to say. They're trying to find out why they're there, and the alien race bring, I'd say, knowledge to humans as a weapon, and basically the whole film is just about Amy Adams' character Louise and Jeremy Renner's character understanding what these aliens are saying, and uniting the Earth, I guess, and working together. So, what do we think, boys?
They're trying to figure out why the aliens are there. That's like the big question.
Yeah, I said that.
This is one of my favorite movies ever, Arrival. As I said in the previous episode, it's directed by my favorite director, Denis Villeneuve. He's an amazing director. He's one of the best working today. Arrival is just, it's one of those movies where I can watch it over and over again. I never get bored of it. I find more to love in it. And it's like based on this short story called Story of a Life. And they were going to call it Story of a Life. People didn't like that. Test audiences didn't like that. So they renamed it Arrival. This is like, it's very unique to, like we talk about like how like terrible alien movies are. Like there are only like a handful that are actually any good, and a lot of them are just like schlocky, like generic sci-fi. This defies all of that entirely, and I think Denis Villeneuve has created probably, well, my favorite alien movie ever, but just generally one of the best alien movies ever.
I won't disagree with you
I
there.
completely agree. I am, like you, Max, I'm a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve. I think he's the best director around at the moment. And this is one of my favourite films by him. I saw it for the first time, I think, if not last year, it was the year before when I was getting into his films, and I was just completely floored by it. It's a film I've been hearing a lot about, like, since it came out. Like, when it came out, it wasn't like a huge box office hit, but it was like a film that everyone who saw it loved it and was telling everyone else to go watch it. And I just never got round to it. And then when I watched it, it wasn't what I was expecting in the slightest. You know, I went in expecting like an alien invasion movie, and what I got was a film where it's kind of more about, not even more, it's like at the same time as being about aliens coming to Earth, it's kind of about the character of Amy Adams that she plays. It's all about her and her memories and how her future is like, she can see into the future because of the aliens, and it's like that having an impact on her decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, so she masters the language, and she said once you've mastered the language, you, like, because the alien race itself doesn't, as you master the language, you have the ability to obviously see the future and all stuff like that. And so the film starts, obviously we put a spoiler warning in the description of all these reviews anyway, so if you don't want the movie spoiled for you, skip the next like 5
watch
minutes.
'em.
Yeah,
I
watch
just
them first and
spoiled
then
it
come
anyway.
back. Yeah. So the beginning of the film, and this is one thing that I fucking loved about this, because this was a really good movie, and the only reason I recommended it is because you guys have spoke really highly of it. So I was like, do you know what? I've not watched it. I like Jeremy Renner. Amy Adams just seems to play the same character anyway, but she was good in this. So the beginning of the film starts with Amy Adams, like the death of her daughter, and then throughout the film, because I assumed that happened at the beginning of the film, like that was before any of this started. Like she had a daughter that died, she investigated this alien thing, fell in love with Jeremy Renner, they had another kid. But you find out throughout this movie that the beginning of the film is actually what she sees in the future. And so the film isn't as linear as is how the aliens' time goes. It's not linear, so I think that worked very well. And when I clicked and sort of realised that the beginning of the film is actually what she sees in the future and why her and Jeremy Renner's character end up splitting up in the future, I was like, that's really good. Like, I did not see it coming, and it wasn't a twist, but it was just a very good, like, in my head I was like, oh, I understand it now. And Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a revelation that makes you completely rethink everything that came up until that point. I watched
yeah, literally.
I watched Chris Stuckman's review earlier, and he said exactly that. There's like a third act revelation that made him completely rethink the first two acts, and it made him appreciate what had come before it a lot more than he did while he was in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great fucking thing to have in a movie, because not only does it change how you see the movie, but it changes how you see the movie whilst you're still experiencing it, and then that just continues to add and add and add, and it's just incredible how it was done, and I like the fact that it's not like the traditional alien film where it's so focused heavily on making, like, showing you the creatures themselves and all this destruction. And it's something that I think, obviously, Max, you're a massive fan of War of the Worlds. I think it's something that War of the Worlds did as well, that although they do have a focus on, obviously, the aliens that invade, it's more down to the characters themselves and how they experience the invasion and how it affects them. And the same thing happens in this film, where obviously Amy Adams' character Louise is starting to understand the language, and she's just having all these vivid memories and flashbacks, which aren't actually flashbacks but flash forwards.
That's also like when you find out that these events have taken place in the future and that this movie is not linear, that's kind of thematic, and it's represented in how Amy Adams herself finds it out, and how the aliens, the heptapods, perceive time to be. They made the actual language that they use in this. The heptapods use. It's like just these like circles with different points on them, and it was developed with a lot of people, and like there's just, I love when that much detail is put into a movie, when like you delve deeper into it, and it's like, well, there's even more to understand about the film, and it makes the viewing experience that much more like rich when you go back to it second time or a third time or a fourth time. And it's like, it's one of those films that you can benefit from further viewing, but the initial viewing is also just as powerful.
There are some really incredible lines in this movie as well, that it's like when Jeremy Renner's character is talking to Louise. I still don't know, I completely forgot Jeremy Renner's character's name, but he's talking to Louise.
Ian?
Yeah, Ian. And he's like talking about the theory of, if you immerse yourself in a language and you fully adapt to that language, it changes how you see the world and your perspective on things. And that is true with different cultures around the world. And then when I heard that, I was kind of thinking like, well, maybe all the stuff that we've seen is her having dreams that are influenced by these events. And then there's another line that Ian says later on in the movie, where he's narrating, and he says these anthropods are able to create complex sentences within seconds. And he's talking about, it's almost like trying to write a sentence with both hands. You need to know the start and the end, the spacing between the words, the width, the length, the size of these words, and it's just these subtle things where they're giving you hints. Like, you need to know you need to know the end to understand where the beginning is. And there's just so many clues pointing towards what is actually revealed in the third act in this movie.
Yeah, I love the inclusion of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is a principle suggesting that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition, and thus people's perceptions are relative to their spoken language. It's very like, once Louise learns this language, her whole worldview is changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
but it's a movie about aliens, but it's also a movie about like language, and it's a very human movie. So there's a lot to do with like how people communicate, how we communicate maybe with the aliens that they're seeing, how we would communicate with them. I found that to be a very realistic way that we'd go about it. It's just a very realistic feeling movie that I don't think you get with a lot of sci-fi. But it also highlights how we communicate with each other, and how different countries communicate with each other. Like, we can't even communicate with other countries. How are we going to communicate with like beings from other planets.
Yeah, I was about to say it also shows like just the primitive nature of our species. The fact that and this is one thing that has always annoyed me about any movie that is trying to understand an alien species themselves. It's just how naive and impatient the human race can be when it comes to like they're trying to teach a species a whole new language, and the guy's like, yeah, we need answers now, we can't take weeks, we can't take months to learn it, we need it now. And it's like, you have no idea like just how like it takes years to fully master a language here on our planet, let alone trying to teach and learn and understand a new language of an alien species. And then it's the whole like all the 12 nations shut themselves off for one another and they can't communicate in any like Louise says it well in the film. She's like, how can we communicate to them if we can't even talk to each other?
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot with how we use language. Like they say, language is the first weapon drawn in a conflict, and they're constantly going over like how like language has affected different areas of humanity. It's like in the beginning, they come directly to Louise and ask her if she can make sense of the alien noises. She's like, well, I can't make sense of it because like it's just an audio recording. She asked if they were going to go to some other guy, and they said, well, we might. And she says, ask him the Sanskrit word for war and its translation. And then he says it's like, I forget what he says, but she says it means a desire for more cows. So there's like this disconnect here where like language is perceived differently to different people, and how when they're learning the alien language, like it means different things to them than it could mean to the aliens. There's a great scene when Louise is in the compound and she's trying to get Forrest Whitaker's character to understand why she's asking using such basic vocabulary with these aliens. She like writes a question on a board, which is like what is your purpose on Earth? She has to break all these different words up and how the words are used in a question. What is a question? What is the word your? Is it possessive your, or is it you are? You know, and they got to try to understand each and every word of this before they can even like, and how these words are used in language. It's like when you're learning a language, first of all you have to learn like what not each word means, but like what the different types of words mean in a sentence. And it's like it's replicated in this sort of almost impossible situation where they're trying to communicate with the aliens, where it's like, how do you even go about this? You know?
Yeah, definitely. I love the attention to detail when it comes to like the scientific element of the film. Like you watch a lot of sci-fi films and like the people will be saying all this like technically like complicated like scientific jargon, most of which is like almost definitely made up words that mean nothing, but like they had a clear attention to detail to make everything like make sense, and they took extensive efforts to make sure like the scientific ideology was all completely accurate. Like they consulted a couple of like renowned like scientists and made sure like all the terminology, graphics and depictions and everything that they were using were all accurate and realistic. And I think that adds a lot to the film. It makes it feel much more realistic than say something like Close Encounters that we watched not that long ago, something like that.
Or E.T.
Yeah, or E.T.
Yeah, it's just like E.T.
No, so I just Googled, and the scene about the transcript or transcribe of the word war in that other dialect, and yeah, Amy Adams' character says a desire for more cow, and the other guy who she said to ask the question to transcribed it or interpreted it as a disagreement or argument, and kind of shows why they obviously went for her. Because if you have someone coming in, that is already on the offensive foot, and this is brought up again in a different way when she asks the colonel if other nations have been communicating with board games, and if that was the case, the only understanding that the alien species has is defeat, victory, win, loss, confrontation, that sort of stuff. So, like, yeah, I got an A in English, so I do love language. So this film was like, I fucking love alien films, and I'm really like, I love writing and stuff like that. I just don't do it. And so this movie was like two fronts for me. I was like just watching all this stuff, like learning all of these new terminologies, and like the fuck, what was the thing that the daughter asked the mum about the just because one side loses does not necessarily mean the other side or the opposing side has gained. The non-zero sum
like
game.
Saying,
that's it.
She's saying, yeah, she's saying about how, like, if you come to like a disagreement, but you can compromise and like
both parties win.
You both get something out of it.
Yeah, the non-zero sum game.
Non-zero sum game.
I just thought it was all really interesting, and all this stuff, like Chris has said, all this stuff is true. The stuff that they were saying is stuff that you can look up, and there's no like fucking made up words to make it sound confusing or fancy or so you understand. Like, same thing with like, I know I've said it a lot, Marvel movies, they'll make up so much shit just to make it sound more scientific than it actually is. But then you get a movie like this where it's so grounded and you don't need all that nonsense to make it interesting or to make it seem how it is. It just is interesting enough not to. It's the premise of the film.
Yeah, definitely. I love
I
love the way things are like slowly revealed, like a mystery. Like it's like slowly as the film progresses, they like reveal other like small bits, and it's like the first half's like very, very suspenseful and tense. Like scenes of like Amy Adams first talking to the aliens and like barely understanding anything and slowly piecing the words together. Those bits are super tense, and I think the sound design and music in those scenes are just absolutely incredible, and it really adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah,
definitely. There's like the first session is like really short when you're just introduced to the aliens. You just like you get to see them. You don't really understand what's going on. They're just like trying to figure out themselves, and then they get out of there. It's like a 2-minute kind of thing. But I wanted to ask like what you guys thought of like the build up to it, because I thought like it's just a very good build up before you actually see the aliens or even like the ship itself.
I will say
you
this
get, like,
section
glimpses
of
on the TV,
the movie was probably my favourite. So mainly just the like filming of the scenes. So when you first see the alien spaceship, there's a very long one take where it follows the helicopter, zooms, shows you the ship, zooms around, shows you the compound, and then the helicopter landing. That was really good. I thought that was a really nice scene. Everything just looked so authentic. It's a word. But then what I think is one of the best scenes in the film, or best camera techniques, is what I said to you guys the other day that I had to Google, is when they actually get into the ship and the characters are in focus, but the background just seems to extend like an illusion, like it just continues to get wider. And I think that's just meant to like put you into how much of a jarring experience this would be for them. I mean, they've just defied gravity, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the build-up was amazing. I loved it. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the first act, like, it's just super suspenseful even before you get to the actual, like, seeing the spaceship or anything. Like, just like Amy Adams about to teach a class and like everyone's phones are going off. Like, even those bits are quite suspenseful.
Yeah, you don't really know what's going on. Like, she gets out, like the alarms go off. She gets out of the school, and like the planes just zoom past. Car crashes into something. You just like you get like these glimpses of what could be going on, or like you see like on the news, people are going crazy.
Yeah.
Like maybe you see a little bit of the spaceship, but not all of it, and it builds up to this like really fantastic shot, like Connor said, when they're panning over the Montana site and you see the ship.
I love scenes like when she leaves the school and she's getting into a car and she's seeing obviously the planes flying over. I love scenes like that in movies. It's not done in very many movies to show you from that perspective. Take Man of Steel and then Batman vs Superman. Man of Steel, you don't really see it from the perspective of the people, but in the beginning of Batman vs Superman, you see it from Bruce Wayne's perspective about how all this destruction and what it does to the people down below, the people that aren't in the spotlight. And then, like, Marvel briefly do this in some of their films when they're in Civil War, when they're showing footage of the civilian perspective on, like, the New York attack, the Sokovian attack, all that sort of stuff. And then the post-credit scene for Infinity War when Nick Fury and the other character are driving down, it gives you a very human reaction of, like, the plane crashing into the building and all this sort of stuff. And I really liked that part of the movie. It just really put me into the shoes of what it would be like. Even though you don't see the spacecraft itself, you just see all these planes flying so close and low to the city that you're just like, yeah, this is quite spooky.
Yeah, you get this sort of imposing feeling of like threat.
Yeah.
Even though like the aliens themselves they're not threatening. They're supposed to be like trying to be friendly with them. But like because you don't know what's happening, you get this sense of threat. You get the mystery that comes with it, and you don't completely know what's going on. It's like the fear of the unknown type of thing. I like that you do get a human perspective of these things that are going on, even like throughout the movie when Louise is in the compound. You know, she's cut off from everyone else that's outside and who's not allowed to see like the ship. All these civilians. You get like people on the news talking about how the people are coping with it. Like they don't think the government are doing the right thing about this, or and it's very like you see from like an inside perspective how that's making them feel. They're all very tense. They don't really know what's going on either. There's a scene where like some soldiers plant a bomb in the ship to try and blow it up because they're just like you don't really get their reasoning, but you understand like from what we've seen of the civilian reaction, people like rioting and looting, going crazy about it. You kind of understand where they're coming from. There's like that whole sequence with like Session 36 Part 2. That's great. Like just like this ticking time bomb while Louise and Ian are in the ship still, and like she's making the symbol with the heptapod Abbott, and just like spraying, and then like all these symbols get sprayed on the screen, and then they get like pushed out, and the gravity shifts, and they're like just hovering there as the bombs explode. Such a great scene.
Yeah, I really liked that. That was really suspenseful because it like at first when I was watching that, I was like, are they going to kill off these two characters, or like I had no clue what was going to happen. Like when she's making these symbols with them, it's just a very tense scene because it keeps going back. Like when they walk into the ship, it pans across and shows you the timer ticking down and then walking past it, and just not really noticing, and then them just hearing the gunfire behind them, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then that happens.
I like seeing like the different countries' reactions to the aliens as well. Obviously, we get primarily America's Montana site that they're trying to relate to the aliens, or they're trying to understand exactly what they're saying. But then we get like China's perspective, who are like a big part of the movie. They're sort of, I think they're playing like mahjong with the aliens, and like Connor said, it's just like this when you communicate through only opposition, you're only going to get like an opposition type of conversation, and you're not there to have a conversation. You're there to just be enemies from the get-go.
I think every
like,
nation will have a different way of communicating with them, and like the Chinese choose games, like you said, confrontation, opposition, win, loss. It's just this whole film is how you communicate, and she breaks down like she's like so they're asking like how long is this going to take or whatnot, and she's like, well, this is the question we want to get to, right? And he's like, yeah. And she's breaking everything down. They need to understand what a pronoun is, what a question is. We need to understand whether they know what the purpose of a question is, whether they're consciously making decisions or whether it's just instinctual. And she's just like breaking down this whole phrase, and it's just like, wow, like, yeah.
There's the part where China declares war against the aliens as well, and because you understand, because they've been playing these games with them instead of actually trying to communicate, like you understand why they feel threatened and how this is like a problem they've created for themselves. So the aliens themselves are not inherently trying to harm them, but it's like this fear of the unknown that people have. They make an enemy of things they don't understand.
I will say, if we ever do get invaded by aliens and we speak another language, I think it will be the rash decisions of either the people or the government that will cause a retaliation or us to go extinct. I'm calling it now.
Yeah.
We are a very primitive and stupid species. Like, we can't even fucking work together on this bloody
Yeah, we
planet.
are. I love
Send an
the
asteroid,
music
Jesus.
throughout.
Kill us all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
love the
fucking love the
music
score
throughout. I
in
think
this
it's by
movie.
Is it Johan Johansson? Is it pretty
Yeah.
short? Yeah. He was one of my favorite like film composers. Sadly, passed away not long after this film came out. But his score throughout is just like, it's very subtle, but I think it's great. And I especially love there's that final violin melody which is performed in like a palindrome way. So like every view reverse it would play the same like notes and everything still.
Yeah, thematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
It
obviously
goes
there's
with, like, the
elements of palindromes
nonlinear
in the film.
storytelling. Yeah.
It all just adds to it. It's like making a good mix. There's a blend of everything, and the music just really added to the atmospheres.
Yeah.
I love the inclusion of the song "On the Nature of Daylight" by Max Richter. That plays at the very beginning and then at the very end as well. It's such a strong emotional song, and that's like placing that song twice in the movie, once at the beginning and once at the end. That ties into the whole kind of loop thing that they're going with like the alien language, which looks like just circles, and how time is perceived as well as non-linear.
There's one
Wanna talk
thing
about some of
I'm
the,
not really into about the film, and that's Jeremy Renner's character. I don't think he really adds anything at all. Like, I don't think his relationship with Amy Adams is that fleshed out, and just generally as a character, I don't think he's really that fleshed out in the overall story.
No, I noticed while watching it that I don't think his character really added much to the
No.
film. I mean, he was a scientist, and you see him work maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the movie. I kind of think he was just there to trade philosophies with Amy Adams' character in order to really flesh her out. I mean, there's the part where they first meet, and he talks about what she's wrote about how language is the first thing. What did you say, Max? What did she say? Language is the first.
Language is the first weapon drawn.
Yeah,
in
and he's
conflict.
like, but you're wrong. It's science. But then you don't really see much of that science throughout this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind Jeremy Renner in this. I think he's more of a character for Louise to sort of bounce off of, because otherwise she'd just be talking to herself. So I get his purpose in the movie.
Yeah,
Because you also don't get like a load of stuff from Forrest Whitaker, because like obviously he's a higher up. He's not going to be helping with her with this kind of thing. I just think it makes sense that she'd have someone there to help her with it, because she's not going to be like this lone soldier doing everything.
I do think though Jeremy Renner's character had some of those interesting lines just from what he said and the questions he asked. It just made me think, like, do you dream in their language? And then the knowing, like, writing with both hands and knowing the future as well as the present. It's, some really good lines.
I love the dream sequence where he's saying that. He's like, do you dream in their language? And then she's just like, clearly she kind of does, as she gets more accustomed to the heptapods way of speaking and their language. She obviously does start there. That's when they talk about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis as well. So you get to see that in action and how it's sort of changing the way she perceives reality and time. And then like, I don't think they were initially going to put that dream sequence in the movie, but the editing when they edited it, they just put it in there and it made sense. There's like a lot of like there's like a weird cut from like Jeremy Renner's face to like a different angle of Jeremy Renner's face. I really love that. It's just like it's quite jarring. And then obviously Louise like looks into the corner and says like, oh, I don't think that makes me unfit to do this job. And she's talking to like the heptapod and it's just there in this room. Just emits that like droning sound. Really creepy.
Yeah.
I think Amy Adams is really great in the film as well. I'm not really a huge fan of her generally. Like, I think she can deliver good performances.
Yeah.
I think it's more I don't really like a lot of the roles she picks more than anything. But she's incredible in this film. I think it's probably like her best performance I've seen in a film.
I agree. They wanted her for the movie. They would not settle on anyone but her. She was their first choice. Yeah.
Yeah, she really fits the role.
I think.
Yeah, she was. The only other thing that I've seen her in are obviously the DC movies, and like until like the third act, I was just watching this movie like, yeah, you're sharing a lot of the same characteristics as your character from the DC movies. And I was quite afraid that she was just at that point typecast to play the same role. Then as it got into the third act and you really start to understand the film, and this is the whole thing about what you're saying about like you have a revelation, it just makes you think of the film a different way. Made me think of her acting in a different way, and I was like, oh, do you know what? Nah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you understand after that revelation that all these things that she's been doing, that she's been saying in on the Montana site at least, they're not like directly influenced by her having lost this child, because that happens in the future. So you are forced to rethink a lot of what you've seen. How do we like the design of the aliens? I love them so much. They're like one of the they're so different from any other like alien design that I've seen before.
Yeah, it's refreshing to
I
see
love
something
the way
that
they
isn't just a grey person with a big head and no clothes.
Yeah.
And just like
I love the way they slowly reveal its look over the course of the film. Like they show it in like little pieces at first, but then as it progresses, you see more and more of it. I think that's really well done in the film.
Yeah, most of the movie you're basically seeing half of them.
yeah, because they're covered in
Because
fog.
like they're so huge. Yeah, they're like so huge, and like the window itself is only the window in the ship is only there to communicate this language. It's not there to show the aliens themselves. So when Louise is sort of like taken up to the spaceship, to there behind the glass, you see like the entirety of them, and you see that they were like only half. You were only seeing like half of what
Yeah, they
they
were
were.
huge.
And I think it's just like really great design, really great CG modeling as well, and the textures looked amazing. I think they were based on whales. They were the design of the aliens, and I do get that.
Yeah, every time
like-
you saw them, when you think back of it, knowing that they're designed of whales, when you go back to
Composition, score.
that sense with some of the sounds that it makes, because they're very. I wouldn't be surprised if they had just taken whale sounds and manipulated them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that. It's like I watched a lot of the behind the scenes footage of what was available on the Blu-ray. You see like the sound designers, they put so much effort into how these aliens would sound. They like went up like a mountain in New Zealand to capture like different animal sounds to use. It's like really crazy, and like you get
Yeah, well, it shows it's definitely
really
unique.
weird. Yeah, and I think what I found very impressive was that they found a way to differentiate Abbott and Costello, the heptapods, from one another. So like one of them's got like a sort of deep droning voice, and and the other one has like a sort of like a clicking kind of voice that sort of like sort of clicks, or like I would do like an impression, but I don't think that would
I've
turn
just
out very well.
googled the aliens from obviously Arrival just to see if I can get a picture of them up, and ET's popped up again.
E.T., that little
Mate,
bastard's
every time I
everywhere.
Google something, there's just a fucking picture of ET somewhere.
He's the new mascot for the Sunday movie marathon.
ETTE.
I just love the way that they were able to like incorporate the alien design with the language that they were trying to put on display on the screen as
Yeah.
well. So like you get these like big tentacles, these 7 tentacles, and like they come out and they expand into more tentacles, like fingers, and like this ink comes out like an octopus. It's really interesting.
And yeah, just creates a symbol that just means. Because what is it? What do they say? They don't write sentences. It's like just an image. I don't know. I can't really remember what they were saying.
Semisigraphic.
Yeah, the one.
It's their writing is semisigraphic. It conveys
Yeah.
meaning, but it doesn't represent sound. It has no form or direction. It's like to do with non-linear orthography, I think it's called.
Anything to add? Gizmo CH.
No, I've gone through all my notes. I didn't have a lot for it. I just got, every time I watch this film, I just get so sucked up in it, I forget to note anything down. So
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching this film again at some point.
Yeah, I love when Louise goes into the ship and she has a conversation with Costello. They've sort of, and then you realize that she can completely understand what they're saying without the need for all this computer technology because she's essentially learned
she's
the
fully
language
understood
and her
it.
worldview has been changed. They're like, and they understand her as well. So she's like they're saying like she's like, where's Abbott? And I think Costello says something like Abbott is death process, which is basically like a way of saying he's dead. He was dying. So yeah, and she just understands that without the need for a computer, and I love that. I love that so much. What is it? I just love that conversation, like in and of itself, because it's like it's not like a normal human conversation. You get like the subtitles for what they're saying, but it's like a kind of just weird, different phraseology than we're used to. It's like there's like this whole thing where they've said offer weapon, and what they don't understand is like like they could confuse the word weapon for the word tool. Like it's kind of the same thing, but this just gets people in like a tizzy. And they get
Well,
really
it's
freaked
the
out by
whole
it.
interpretation
like-
of the language, really, isn't it? What you're immersed in
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
your view, and some people
Yeah.
will see a weapon as a tool. A hammer can be used as a weapon, but it also is a tool. They use that in the film as well. If I give you a hammer, everything is nails.
Yeah, I love just Costello saying like basically explaining what's happened to her. She's like, he says or it says, Louise has weapon, use weapon, and she's like, I don't understand what you mean. And then he says, we help humanity. In 3,000 years, we need humanity help. I'm like, whoa, that's like such a trippy moment.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Where you sort of, it all comes together for you, and you realise that they experience time in this way.
but she doesn't
and
even
now
she doesn't even click
Louise
when
does.
she's speaking to him. It's when she comes back down and she's like, Jeremy ran it. Ian's like grabs her and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, just having all these like images in her head and these memories that haven't happened yet. And she's like, "Oh, I understand why my husband left me." And he's just like, "You were married?" And you're like, "Ah, she's understood it now. She's got it." Even the scene.
It's a really
Even
sad.
the scene where she so there's the point where it goes to the future when she speaks to the Chinese general, and he's like, I don't know how your mind works, but I think you needed to see this. And it's just his phone number. He's like, I'll never forget what you said to me. And she at the time, which is in the future, has no idea what he's talking about, but then in the present she knows exactly what he said and what his number was. And she's like, it's just that whole non-linear thing that she's not experiencing time in the same way as what she used to.
That's a fantastic scene. That's like one
Yeah.
of the best scenes. Like the music usage is absolutely incredible. It's so emotional. It's just like such an emotionally resonant scene for me. This was like the first time I cried at this movie as well. It took me over. It was amazing. Yeah.
But That's pretty much everything. I've really enjoyed this movie. I've got nothing else to add.
No, me neither.
Yeah. Again, this is a movie that I could talk about for ages.
So, should we get on to the review of the movie?
Yeah.
Let's do
right.
ratings.
This one can be out of Abbott's, because he was the best alien.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Not really the best one if he died, but...
Wow. How good could he be if he's dead?
Exactly.
Fucking hell, Chris. That's almost as controversial as when you were on my podcast and said that's almost like being gay.
Yeah, this film's fantastic. This is like one of the best sci-fi films of the last 20 years, in my opinion. Just a really
Wait, I
well
thought
written,
this was a documentary.
incredibly well. It could be a documentary of the future. Yeah, just a really well made film. Incredible directing, cinematography, music, acting. Just an incredible film, and I'm gonna give this 9 Abbotts out of 10.
Nice. I think I've made my feelings on this movie clear. This is one of the best sci-fi movies ever. It is absolutely one of my favourite movies. I will watch it until the day I die. Yeah, everything that Chris said. The cinematography is amazing. It was like supposed to feel like a rainy day, like a rainy Tuesday, and it definitely feels like that. It's like it was very realistic. I feel in the way that everything was handled and the way that our world would respond to something like this. I just it only gets better every time I watch it. And if this doesn't prove that Denis Villeneuve is one of the best directors working today, I honestly don't know what to tell you. This is just, it resonates with me on so many levels. I get so emotionally invested in this, and just the design of like the ship and the aliens are so unique. I think they'll go down in history as like some of the most like interesting designs for aliens that we've seen. And I just love that it's just very unique and very out there. It's not something that we've seen before in sci-fi. All the acting is great. It looks great. The music is fantastic. And the storytelling and structure is just something I've never seen before. I'm going to give it 10 Abbotts out of 10, of course.
Yeah. This movie was, I'm glad I recommended it. It was just fantastic. Everything about it was really good. It was just so refreshing to watch an alien sci-fi movie that was nothing like I'd seen before, and just going into it, and I came out this movie smarter than when I went in. Just learned so many terms from this movie.
Yeah.
So fucking strange.
Yeah.
And that was part of what drew me into it, just how realistic it was, like you both have said before. I'll watch this film some point throughout this year again, and it is one of the, like you guys have said, one of the best sci-fi movies I've watched. Second to Popstar Christmas, but it's definitely a close second. So I'm going to give this film a 10 Abbotts out of 10. It was really good. Highly recommend you watch this film.
Nice.
Wonderful.
I think in about
Fantastic.
15, 20 years' time, this is going to be like considered an all-time classic.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was part of the 1001 movies to watch before you die book, but they redacted it a couple of years back. It's a shame.
I'm sure it'll go back in.
Whatever, you don't need a book to tell you that it's amazing.
Like you said, some of the movies
You
in
don't need a
there,
book to tell you what to get out of a movie.
like you said, some of the movies in there are bad anyway. So what's it matter?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what's everyone's recs for
We should
episode
also
20?
point out that, just wanted to point out that this was all 10s from Max this week.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Holy shit! Flawless record.
This is a great week for
Yeah,
me.
you must have fucking loved every movie.
I did.
Yeah.
I think I gave
about
it
that?
quite high ratings, apart from the 4 that I gave David Lynch's film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on to next week's recommendations. I was going to pick a really bad film next week, but I think I'll save that for a couple weeks. Just because I'm feeling generous. So this week we talked
thanks.
about a film from my favourite director, so I thought, why not pick a film from my second favourite director next week? Because a load of his films got added onto Disney Plus through that Star thing. My pick is the 2014 film The Grand Budapest Hotel, directed by Wes Anderson.
Lovely. Yeah, I saw a lot of his movies have been added to Disney Plus as well. I watched I've only seen like one of the I've only delved into one of the movies so far. But I do like Wes Anderson as a director. I think he's freaking fantastic. But I watched oh god, what's that one that I watched, Chris? It's like they went to India or something.
Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah, I watched the Darjeeling Limited. Put me in the mood for something like of that kind of place, like in India.
Yeah.
India set, I guess. So I'm gonna recommend a movie that I've seen once before, but I really enjoyed. It was recommended by my grandmother of all people. But it is a 2016 movie directed by Garth Davis called Lion.
Oh, nice. I've been meaning to watch that.
Interesting. Right, so I'm going to go on the trend of just recommending movies that I've heard you guys talk about that I haven't seen yet. So my recommendation for next week is going to be Inception. Yeah.
Ooh,
it's a movie that I've been meaning
Nice.
to watch for a while, and I saw it on Netflix the other day as I was scrolling through, and I was like,
yeah.
never seen it. I know it's going to be one of those movies. I'm going to have to try and watch it twice before we do the review for next week, because I have heard so many times that it's a film where you need to watch more than once to really understand it. So I'm going to try and make an effort of watching it once over the weekend, and then once on the day that we record the next podcast, just so I'm refreshed on the movie itself.
Yeah, definitely give yourself enough time with that one. It's like 2.5 hours long.
Well, not as much as Braveheart, but
No, not quite. But nearly.
I think mine and
before
Max's
we-
films are like 90 minutes, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't know. What, Lion?
Yeah, isn't that like 90 minutes long? I swear it's quite a short-ish film. I could be completely wrong.
God, let's see. How long is Lion? It's 2 hours long.
Okay, well, still not super long.
No. But yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to episode 19 of the Sunday Movie Marathon. We do, of course, have our social media pages. YouTube, the Sunday Movie Marathon. Twitter at Sunday Movie Pod. Facebook at Sunday Movie Marathon. And Letterboxd at Sunday MM.
and we actually
Thank you
now
so
have
much.
an OnlyFans as well, where we just
No,
post the
don't.
raw DVDs of the DVDs.
We post some raw stuff.
Thanks for watching.